Hello again. We are up to video number 13. After this, we only have about 3 more videos to go until the series concludes, and we are moving right through these videos. This has been so much fun for me. I hope you guys love this series as much as I've loved recording these for you. And in today's video, we are going to take a look at user management with Ansible. It's going to be a lot of fun, so let's go ahead and get started. So now I'm going to basically open up that YAML file that we've been working with here. And right after the pre-tasks section, I'm going to add a new section here. I want this to be run on all hosts. Since we will be making changes to the systems, we will need to use become and then true for sudo. And then for tasks, we only have one for right now. And what I'm going to do is create a user named Simone. This is just kind of like an inside joke for me because there was this movie called Simone some time ago. Honestly, it wasn't really that great, but I still love it. I guess sometimes we love movies that are not the best or not the highest rated. And the movie is basically about a simulated actress named Simone that gets very, very popular. And she's just a computer-generated actress. And Simone is actually short for Simulation 1. And I just thought it would be a really cool username for a user that runs in the background and carries out tasks. But you could use whatever name you want. It really doesn't matter. So let's add some tags. Actually, I'll add just one. I'll add always. We always want this to run. And we will be working with the user module. And the name of the user that we want to create is Simone. And I'm going to make her a member of the root group, but this is just a test. Whether you actually want to do that is another story altogether, but I just want to give you guys an example of adding a user to a group as well. So I will save this playbook here. So let's go ahead and run it. But before we do, let's just take a look at the Etsy password file, just so you guys can get a look at that. To see what the most recently added user was on each of these. And this might vary for you, but you can see the users that we have here. We have my user right here with a user ID of 1000, a group ID of 1000. We have a couple other users here as well. These are system users that were created after my account was created. But we can get a feel for what the most recently added users were on each of these. So that way we can see the difference more clearly when we run this, which I'll do right now. And I'll press enter. And let's see what happens. We could already see the change. It changed it on each of the servers as I intended it to, and it must have added the user, so we'll check that in just a moment. We'll make sure we have no errors at all. And we can see changed is equal to 1 on each of these. So it looks like she was added there, and there, and there, and there. So what I did here was I added a new section, host all, because this is something that I want to run on every single server. I probably should add a new line break right here to make that consistent. But anyway, we were able to add this user to each of the servers. And that's why I wrote hosts all right here, because again, sometimes you actually do want something to be run on every host regardless of the group. In the next video, we are actually going to expand on that quite a bit, but I'll save that for that video. But for now, we were able to successfully create a user on all of our servers. How cool is that? And now what I'm actually going to do is show you how to configure this user to be kind of like our Ansible user to run Ansible jobs in the background, because we do want Ansible to be fully automated, and this is going to be basically the beginning of that. So what I'm going to do here is add yet another play, So we're going to actually use Ansible to add an SSH key. This is going to be pretty cool. And in fact, go ahead and get this centered here. We have a module specifically for this. It's called Authorized Key. And the user we want to add this key for is Simone. And then we have the key. We'll just basically type that out in double quotes. So what I will do for now is just do Control-Z to send this to the background. Then I will cat the contents of the public key for Ansible, which is this right here. And then I will go ahead and put it right here. And there we go. I was able to paste that key right here. It's just wrapped, goes off the side of the screen. But if I go up here, we can see that it is there. It's in double quotes. So we do want to make sure that we have double quotes around the entire key. But that's not all that we're going to do actually. Add yet another play. We're going to basically make this user even more useful. And we're going to use the copy module, which I showed you in a previous video, the source file, which we haven't created yet, but we will. And I will name it sudoer_Simone. The destination. The owner of that file will be root. The group will also be root. And the mode is going to be this right here. And I forgot to add the tags line. I'll go ahead and do that now. Tags is set to always. So let's go ahead and take a look at what we're doing here. So obviously we're creating a user right here, which I've already explained. And here we are adding an authorized key file for that user. This is the Ansible SSH key that we created earlier in the series. We basically want to allow administrators who have this key to be able to log in as Simone without a password or passphrase. And once Simone is running and doing her thing, we want her to be able to use sudo without a password. So what we're going to do is copy this file, which I'll create in just a moment, and we're going to put it in this directory right here. And these are the permissions for that file. Let's go ahead and save it. And now we will create that file, and we do have a files directory here. So I'll go inside there. We only have the default site HTML file so far. Let's create a new file. Now I'm going to explain this later, but if you've ever used sudo to manage sudo access on a Linux server, then the syntax is going to be immediately familiar to you. But we're going to type the name of the user, all, then equals, and then all in parentheses. No pass WD, all just like that. Now, if we go to any of these servers here, we just try to ls against that directory where we will be copying this file to. We don't have any user files in here just yet, but essentially what this allows us to do, and this is not Ansible specific, if we add a file to sudoers.d with the sudoers syntax, we are able to control access to sudo by just adding or removing a file. So when we copy the Simone file here, it's going to set Simone's permissions for sudo, and if we want to revoke those permissions, we can simply delete the file. Now you do have to be careful though, because if you have a syntax error, that would be a big problem. So just make sure that you've typed everything as I did, and if you're following along with me. And also, I do have a Wiki article linked below in the description if you want to copy and paste, if you want to keep it safe. So we have that file right here, and I'll go back to the first directory. Let's go ahead and run the actual playbook and make sure that it works just fine. So it added the SSH key and it added the sudoers file. How cool is that? So let's go ahead and test this. I'm going to randomly pick server number 2. We'll get the IP address. I'll just use the tmux method of copy and paste. Doesn't really matter. I'm just lazy. I don't want to have to type the IP address. going to copy it. Here it is. Then here on the workstation, I'm going to SSH. I'll use an input file, basically a key, the Ansible key, and then I'm going to type user Simone at, and then the IP address of that server. See if it works. And as you can see, I was logged in immediately to that server with no passphrase or no password. And I'm logged in as Simone, or at least I'm supposed to be. And yes, we are Simone. So I should be able to run anything with sudo, basically. And I didn't get a password prompt at all. We'll get back to the video in just a moment, but real quick, I want to mention my sponsor, Linode. Linode has been my infrastructure provider for quite a while now and has just recently announced their own managed Kubernetes service. And this enables you to combine Linode's ease of use and simple pricing with the infrastructure efficiency of Kubernetes. With the Linode Kubernetes engine, you can get your infrastructure and workloads up and running in minutes instead of days and scale resources in real time to meet your infrastructure needs. And with Linode's managed Kubernetes engine, the pricing is simple. Only pay for what you use. And with Linode's 99.9% uptime SLA and bundled transfer, you can significantly cut costs when compared to AWS, GCP, and Azure. Designed with the open source ecosystem of Kubernetes, the Linode Kubernetes engine supports integration with tools like Helm, operators, and more. To help you get started with Kubernetes, Linode gives you access to in-depth documentation, video tutorials, and webinars. So go ahead and sign up at promo.linode.com/learnlinuxtv to get a $60 60-day credit to test out LKE or any of Linode's other offerings. I appreciate Linode's continued support of Learn Linux TV. Now, let's get back to the video. So what this means is that we can use the Simone user, or whatever you decided to call the Ansible user on your end, to carry out Ansible tasks in the background should we ever need to do that. That is very useful. But more importantly, when it comes to this video, I just showed you some pretty cool things here. So we were able to do some user management. We were able to create the user. We were able to use the authorized key module for that user. And actually, I'm going to go ahead and show you that. We can see that the authorized keys file for this user actually does include the key that we added. So yes, you are able to actually manage your authorized keys with Ansible for your users. The user does have to exist first, but you are able to do that. And then we were able to copy a sudoer file to the etc sudoers.d directory. So if I do an ls again, we can see that the Simone file was created. The permissions are a bit restrictive, and they need to be because we need to make sure we lock this down. And we can see that the file does include the exact verbiage that we put in the file inside Ansible. That's pretty cool. Now, what we want to do is see if we can use what we've done so far to simplify our playbook runs. And this is the command that we have been using right here to run our Ansible playbook. But I want to go ahead and try to get this down and remove the ask become pass completely. And if we don't include the become password, it's going to still fail. So what we can do, we can edit our Ansible config file, which is this guy right here. We're going to add remote_user, and that will be equal to Simone. We already have the Ansible key right here mentioned, so that's good. And now we're basically saying we want to run the playbook as the user Simone. So I'll save the file. So let's recall the command that we used to run the playbook in the first place. And let's see if we can actually remove the ask become pass. I'll press enter. And so far, so good. It didn't ask us for a passphrase, a pseudo password, or anything like that. It's just running straight away. This is definitely a step in the right direction for sure. This is pretty cool. And there we go. So at this point, we have a bit of a chicken and egg problem here, because when we are setting up a fresh server, we are not going to have the Simone user on that server. So what I generally like to do is create a Bootstrap playbook. And in that playbook, I will put all the commands in there that are required to initially set up the server with the users and anything that's absolutely required to get Ansible itself provisioned. And then I'll leave all the actual provisioning tasks in a different playbook. So what I'm going to do is make a copy of the site.yml, and I will copy it to bootstrap.yml. So inside this file, I am actually going to remove a few things here. I'm going to remove the task here that adds Simone, because our Bootstrap playbook will take care of that for us. I'm going to leave the SSH key right here. I'll explain why in a moment. And I'm going to remove the sudoers line as well. I'll go ahead and save it. And let's edit the Bootstrap file. So here we have, of course, updates. I want to leave that here. And I'm going to leave all this right here. But then I'm going to remove everything after that, basically. Just basically Control K and Nano deletes lines, and I'm just kind of holding it down and pressing it quickly. So let's explain this a little bit. So I have this Bootstrap script, and the intent is we have a fresh server we just set up. It does not have Ansible. Ansible has never ran against it ever before. We want to create a Bootstrap script that we will use to add the initial configuration to the server. And what this Bootstrap script here will do is we are still going to want to install updates, because we always want to make sure that we have all the updates installed. So I'll leave that alone. And then we also want to add the Simone user. We want that user to be there. And we want the SSH key to be added as well. And we want the sudoers file to be added as well. So after this Bootstrap script is run, and yes, you will need to add the sudo password for this to work. But once it's run, the Simone user will be on the server. The authorized key will be there. And it'll also have all of the updates. And then we are adding the sudoers file as well, which means that Simone will be able to use sudo without a password, so that the server will be ready to go to accept Ansible commands from either our Ansible server or our workstation, wherever we might be running these from. So I'll save the file. And there's another change I want to make, this time for the site playbook. I'm going to remove the update only here. And I'm going to remove the dist upgrade as well, because the Bootstrap script will make sure that the server starts out with all the updates, so we should be good on that. But we do want to still update the cache, because we want to make sure that the repository indexes are not stale. That could be a problem that could cause the playbook run to fail. But there's actually something else that I want to add here as well, a new play. And I haven't shown you guys this yet. This is pretty cool. We could do changed_when and set that to false. And I'm going to do the same thing up here. So changed when allows you to basically have control over what is considered a change. All we're doing is updating the cache. I don't care if this registers a change. In fact, updating the cache as fast as these distributions implement changes is probably always going to result in changes, and they're not really relevant to what we're doing here. So basically what this is going to do is consider this not a change no matter what. So we will not see changed equals 1 anytime the cache has been updated. That just keeps the output a bit cleaner for us. So I'll save this file here. And we can go ahead and test our Bootstrap script. So I am going to leave the ask become pass right here. I'm going to leave that there. We're just pretending like this is a new server, even though it's not. I'll press enter here, type in the password, make sure that it works, that there were no syntax errors. And there we go. So we could use this script right here, this Bootstrap script, to go ahead and set up Ansible. Then once it's set up, we can go ahead and remove most of this here and run the site playbook with no password. And it should work just fine. And I should change the verbiage because it's not actually installing updates. So I'll go ahead and fix that after this runs. It did work. And I'll go ahead and make that change here. And there we go. So we've gone over quite a bit in this video. We were able to not only go over user management, we were able to add a user to the system, we were able to add an SSH key as well, a sudoers file to automate the sudo aspect, and we were also able to use this new Simone user that we created as basically a system service user, if you will, that can run in the background or accept Ansible commands and run them. And it doesn't even require us to add a password. So you definitely want to make sure at this point that that Ansible key is locked away safe. There are other ways to secure Ansible that are beyond the scope of this series, but good SSH key management and SSH key hygiene is to definitely keep important keys like that safe. And one thing I do want to mention here, if I bring up the site playbook again, is you'll notice that I left this play right here to add the SSH key. Now, this play is going to be run as part of the Bootstrap. So anytime this site playbook is run, this requirement is already met. But I consider this kind of like a placeholder because you can actually use state absent to remove this key if it ever gets compromised. So for example, you can add a new authorized key if you have a problem with the original one, for example, if it leaks. So you can have a play to add a new key to all your servers, and then you can add that above this one. And then you can set this one to state absent to remove this key from those servers, or even just change the key if you'd like. So that's why I left that here, because maybe you want to do some SSH key management later. It's just a placeholder. If you want to go ahead and do that, this is a good place that you can do that. But for now, it just includes the same key as the Bootstrap script. But now what we need to do is, of course, synchronize our changes with GitHub. And we have quite a few changes here. So we'll do git diff on the Ansible config file. We added the remote user. So let's go ahead and add that and commit it. And basically we have quite a few changes here. So what I'm going to do is basically add all of this in here. So what I'm going to do is do git add and then dot add everything. I added a Simone user. So I'm sure this goes against the git commit message etiquette, but this is just a sample. You can add whatever text you want here for the commit message. The point is we definitely want to make sure we get in the habit of adding everything to version control here. So let's just do git status one more time, and everything is staged. So now everything should be synchronized with GitHub and we are ready to go. So there you go. That was the 13th video in the Ansible series, and we did quite a bit here. We were able to add a user, we were able to add an authorized keys file, we were even able to turn that into a system user that we can use to go ahead and automate the further Ansible runs that we will be doing. And then we also created a Bootstrap script as well that will assist us anytime we want to bring a fresh server online. So that was a lot of fun. So go ahead and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already done so, and I will see you in the next video as soon as it's uploaded. Thank you so much for checking this out.